What's happening, guys? Had the pleasure today to have Dr. Kelly Starrett, Mobility Wad, Supple Leopard. Those that don't know about him, he's written many books, New York bestseller. He's a physical therapist. He works on top athletes. He works with the Saints, the New Orleans Saints, Andrew Luck, to name a few. Obviously, he just worked with the All Blacks. Make sure to follow him on Instagram, follow his YouTube. He talked us through a little bit of mobility. That's kind of his drill to help you perform better without getting injured. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to give it a like. Make sure to give it a subscribe. Thanks, guys. What's up, guys? Silent Mike, Supertraining Gym. Smelly as usual. Special guest in the house, Dr. Leopard. He, not leprosy, but just Dr. Leopard himself.
Kelly Starrett.
The one and only.
Leprosy is a different thing. I mean, like,
But it's close, right?
yeah, you know, as long as you don't confuse that with syphilis, because that's where it gets weird.
You are in the Bay Area. I think a lot of weird things happen down there.
Look, syphilis is like, it's basically it has this thing called the spirochete.
Yes.
That's what the organism is, and it eats through your brain. And you can actually, this is like when actually we see it's dementia, but it's actually undiagnosed syphilis. True fact.
So,
Is it too early for a syphilis joke?
no, that's good. So sex makes you dumb? Kind of?
It can. Potentially. Potentially. You remember that Starrett Live, they're like, bad idea jeans?
Yeah.
Remember that? It's like, I'm never coming back to Haiti. I never use it. I need to only use a condom. Bad idea.
What about our new prop, whatever? Condoms or no condoms in porno?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, that didn't offend me.
66.
69. But what messed me up was that you could sue someone if you saw them perform porno without a condom.
I'm sure those guys, just wasting their time on porno, searching for it.
Yeah. I'm just
I don't watch it when they're wearing a condom, so I don't know what to think of all this.
Fortunately, in California now, apparently you can have condomless porn.
Hi.
Yeah.
But you can't
You
have
guys
a store
learn a
yet.
lot.
You can't have a store yet. I did all the research.
No,
We can't open a store.
You can't own a condomless porn weed store.
I'm going to open a condom weed store.
What are we talking about today?
So we got butt wink issues all over the internet, everywhere. And you were talking about stability in the pelvis, talking about condoms on a box. So let's talk about maybe box butt wink and regular butt wink.
Okay, so
He's dead, right?
that's right.
Ain't
Pelvis
nothing but a
Presley?
hound.
Let's take two issues right away.
Yeah.
So let's start at the bottom.
Okay.
So when we're seeing butt wink, let's call it reversal. And what we're really worrying about is that the spine will handle some loaded flexion as long as we're not moving into flexion. The problem with butt wink is what we're doing is we're typically going from a slightly extension bias position through neutral or through axially organized into flexion, so when you back up.
When you hit the hole, things are going weird.
So what ends up
We
happening
forgot to tell you people, he makes up words.
Yeah,
So.
we'll put up all the definitions, I swear.
So imagine that when you're getting motion like this through your spine under load, it's not this simple rotation. You're getting shear, and it's the shear that's really hard on the disc.
Yeah. So there's an internet joke of taking a broke city or wherever we're headed to. What happens or can happen if that goes wrong?
Well, it's hard on the system.
So we get herniated discs?
It may.
All right.
But the bottom line is that when you put your spine under a change of position, it's the fastest way to actually shut down your force production.
Yeah.
Your nervous system recognizes that kink in the nervous system is a problem. And what you'll see is that guys will pull rounded, and then they don't pull anymore rounded. They're just stuck.
Yeah.
And then they finish the lift rounded. And that's actually a pretty stable position. Maybe not the best position, but a pretty stable position. But the rest of the time when we're seeing guys, move and reverse a lot, it's like how many licks to get to the bottom of the chewy center.
That's what Mark always talks about. Like, if you can find a good position and stay in it, it might not be perfect, but it's safer.
That's safer. That's right. So we'd rather
Find something that you can do. And
that's right. We'd rather you be less perfect, but don't move. Right? And learning how to brace that position, because sometimes you're going to pick something up in a bad shape, or you're going to find yourself in a bad shape. So let's figure out how to stiff there. But understanding some of the basics of understanding that mechanism. So let's start at the bottom. So before we even squat, let's just say hip crease below the knee is a decent goal.
Yeah.
Right? That's a decent goal. That's not ass to ankle. That's a decent goal. So if you lay down your back, Mark.
Oh, no.
Which is a good way to start any conversation with Mark Bell. Hey, Mark Bell, lay down.
Legs up.
Because this is already an impressive athletic accomplishment today.
It's not always easy for me to get down here or get up.
So one of the things that we're looking at is, does the athlete even have the basic range of motion? And so if you're seeing an athlete who's having a hard time setting up with a lumbar, neutral, good organized spine on the deadlift, or is reversing the bottom position as they approach the end, one of the things we can check easily is just bring the knee to the chest. And you can see that as I bring up Mark's knee to his chest, I start to run into resistance here but his thigh should easily go all the way here with no resistance. And I'm already pressing into a massive amount of resistance, and he's rounded his lumbar. So if we keep his hip in the back position, and then I organize, he has just about enough range of motion to get to just parallel. So beyond parallel, and we start to see compensations. Well, I have to go wider, or I have to start spinning the leg out, and I start to see us kind of going around the problem. But first and foremost, can I identify in my athletes, hey, I see a butt winking, do you have 130 degrees of hip range of motion? And you don't. And look, our big guys are going to have some tissue, right? But I still should be able to press through that tissue without running into a wall. And you'll notice Mark's depth typically is he squats hip crease below the knee, and look where he runs up, that's the end range. And as he goes a little bit wider, he gets a little bit more range, but still, that's not deeper than that. And so if we ask him to start going deeper than that, we're going to start to see reversal. So what we can work on is just improving hip flexion with the thousands of mobility drills out there, but spending time clearing and improving this hip range of motion is the first step. So let me show you, Mike. Mark Bell. Oh. You do. It's so true. So drop this leg down. Buddy. So you can see easily here that without binding up, we're now hip crease well below the knee. Yeah. But what you're going to find with a lot of your athletes is you bring this knee to chest, you're going to run into a wall. Yeah. And so this is not magical thinking. You know, you're not going to be able to wish yourself down or squat your way down. What we've been doing is saying, hey, if I have enough load on, and if I'm strong enough this way, I can resist those forces. But now I'm starting to send weird cross forces, because as the knee comes to chest and I miss range of motion, I'm starting to reverse. Then the psoas and the hip flexor has to start to pull against that. So I have one set of forces going backwards, the other set of forces going forwards, and now that shear and the forces on the spine are even higher. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So again, anything we can do to spend time improving this, setting the capsule, the band of distractions, right? And couch was more of the anterior.
Right, wrong.
Improving your quadriceps health will improve your ability to squat, but not necessarily improve your hip flexion.
Gotcha.
But one of the easiest things we did, and we did this with Donnie a long time ago, we noticed when he was going for his world record, he was just missing a little hip range.
Right.
Just having a mate lay on your chest, drive that hip to the back of the socket, no one dislocates posteriorly, and then just bring that knee to chest. So instead of letting the knee pop up and let the hip coming up out, right, which is the reversal, I'm going to press it into the floor and then just try to ride that thing forward. When I get to end range, just kind of hang out here for a second.
I remember we rotate the leg a little bit too, right?
Yeah, and you know, because the second component to this, and this is what's important, is that if my hip comes out of the socket and I lose congruency, then what ends up happening is I end up spending my ability to rotate the hip because I've used the hip capsule to achieve hip flexion range of motion. Right. And so what ends up happening is I come up and then my rotation goes away. So you can see that as I hit this end range, that's not a lot of internal rotation. I should have 40, 30 degrees, at least in our powerlifters.
Why don't any of us have that?
Well, because we lift heavy weights and we sit and we don't know. And we all came to it late. You know, that we weren't, someone wasn't saying the first time we got under load, hey, we've got to keep an eye on this. Right? I mean, think about all the years you've been lifting weights, all the years you've been wrestling.
Yeah, no one's ever brought it up.
No one ever brings it up. Right now, we know. And if I actually put your hip to the back of the socket in neutral, this is what we call your hip rotation window. And I should be able to get to at least 45 and at least 30. And you can see that you're missing range of motion. I can't get your leg past neutral. Right? You see how he kind of stuck at zero?
His foot should be what, here?
Yeah.
And so it's his foot, his shin is only even with where his knee is, right?
That's right. And when I want to get beyond that. And so, but his total range of motion, his external rotation is plenty, but this internal rotation is lacking. And that means that
you could put him in a figure 4 leg lock, but probably not a Boston crab. That's what we're talking about.
Well, I didn't actually want to be all sophisticated. But what ends up happening then is that if I'm missing hip flexion and be able to rotate, I start to turn the foot out because that unloads the rotational necessity.
And then you look at where he's got muscle.
That's right.
So maybe he's doing that.
Right? And we know that, hey, I have an incomplete ankle range, so what you try to do is say, hey, look, let me buy myself some additional slack in the ankle. That allows me to have a little more vertical shin. I've solved one problem. But again, we're talking about butt wink, and the biggest thing that we're seeing right off the bat that we could fix with our athletes is, hey, improve the end range of your hip flexion. If you just have a little bit more than the depth to which you're squatting, everything changes. And that can just be simple banded stuff, and it's not difficult. Even, you know, you're at home and you just load up and spend some time working on that end range of that hip flexion. Instead of just, hey, I hope I get out of the car, I'm 90 degrees, and I jump under the bar, and it's not there, right? So that's the first end of hip flexion butt wink. The second thing that we're not talking about is when we see athletes come under the bar, and I think this happens less with really big weights, because if you've ever taken a yoke out like 600 or 700, you take it straight up, right? And what you don't do is take it out like this. Right. And a lot of our athletes who are squatting under the big loads, because under the big loads, no guy is doing this. You just don't initiate a squat like this, right? But what ends up happening is for these smaller loads, as athletes are getting stronger, they're overextended. And now, because this position here, I've still got my lumbar curve, my butt is engaged, I can handle a large axial load straight down. But the second I go from this position, I've now closed the distance between my pelvis and my femur. Yeah. So as I start to run in, if I'm missing range of motion, I start to run into my pelvis early, boom, and the femur starts pushing me back into what is the regular position for the spine hit, right? So it's not that I don't have enough range of motion, it's that I've just said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and close this off early because it's easier to do this under a big load and be hanging, and then I run into my own back, and then I have to come back out, and now I've got two huge shear loads. So that we call that the first 3-inch drill, which can mean a lot of things in this gym.
Yeah.
But literally, 2.5. Literally getting athletes to go from straight up and organize, where my butt is squeezed and I'm screwing my feet in, my hips into the ground, into being able to press back instead of let me keep my torso upright and press back. So how do I go from this orientation to this orientation? And that's why I think with the slingshot, what we shouldn't be doing is just kind of parking ourselves in mid-range. Every time we're on the hip circle, every time we come up to full circle or full hip, we should be practicing here and then pressing back so that this relationship doesn't change. Because if I break, then I can't even see what's going on.